buyer strategies that are actually working in 2026 for condos?
For specifically condos, which means as a buyer, you have more buying power. So strategies that are specifically working are getting seller credits and using them towards like 2-1 buy downs or just a credit towards closing costs. So ultimately, if you give the seller their list price or close to it, you can actually then negotiate a credit and then utilize that credit to then kind of change your loan product. So 2-1 buy down kind of temporarily brings your loan rate down, or you can permanently bring down that rate. But ultimately, it affects your monthly payment, in which case you feel more comfortable stretching a little bit on a certain list price. You can also get longer timelines in general. So generally speaking, like 5 days is normally the home inspection. You can maybe get 7 or 8. They're being a bit more lenient on just closing time. So normally that's 30 days. You can maybe get 40 days. So I would say those are all things that current buyers are negotiating on, is because normally you're also a first-time home buyer. And so you're locked into a lease. So some of it is those longer timelines and then just general credits and using them towards a loan product. Anything else?
In terms of buying a condo, other strategies that are like negotiating on behalf of buyers, I would say asking for a credit or a repair in your home.
Yes, I think that's totally fair in the sense that are willing to fix more than they normally would. And so we always say you can't ask for old, you can only ask for broken. However, some people are walking into these homes and there's a 15-year HVAC, or the HVAC is 15 years old. And they're kind of like, I would like a credit towards this. And you're a bit further along in the process as well. So the seller doesn't want you to pull out of the deal. And they will, at this current juncture, sometimes give you more of a credit or repair it than they normally would.
Yep. And then keeping your contingencies as a condo buyer is also it's a huge benefit for buyers in our area right now. Keeping your appraisal contingency is huge. And that just gives you the ability to negotiate if the house were to underappraise, which of course, working with a local lender, your house isn't generally underappraising, but it can happen. And having that.
And if it's under $1 million, you're going to get a waiver probably. In 2026, what are buyers using to negotiate when they're buying a single family home?
Great question. This also is product specific, right? If you're purchasing a home in Chevy Chase, Maryland, that's under 1.5, like there's tons of competition there. You're probably waiving everything, which is tough, but you can get a pre-offer inspection coordinated. I would say a huge benefit to a buyer is having an agent who is communicative, not only with you, but also with other agents.
Yes.
We've won several competitive situations just by being communicative with a seller's agent. I can think of 2 instances that we were not the highest offer, but we maintained the best communication, and we work with local lenders who the seller's agents recognized, and that,
Huge
gives
benefit.
a huge comfort for them.
Yeah, I think having a relationship with that listing agent, or not, but at least having a rapport is super helpful. And then understanding what's most important to them. So sometimes it's not always price, as long as your price is close enough, but you can close faster, or you are willing to waive everything and the other party's not. I think that's super helpful. And then do you want to talk about, I would say, risk level, helping the buyer understand the risk level of waiving contingencies?
Yes, that's really important. We go through in our home buyer process Zoom, we go through what that really means to waive these contingencies, what the contingencies are protecting you from. I think it's really important, obviously, for a buyer to understand what risk they're taking on if they're waiving a home inspection, if they're waiving an appraisal, if they're waiving financing. But now there are a lot of options and tools available to buyers to help them feel more confident if that's the choice they're making. So for example, they can get pre-underwritten and then easily finance.
Yeah, and we're pretty much always doing a pre-inspection if you are waiving an inspection. So you buy the home still feeling warm and fuzzy. It's just not contingent upon that portion of the contract. And the other thing I was going to say was something about risk level, understanding it. I would say also in our consultation with the buyer, we can kind of tell whether you're going to be entering a competitive market or not.
Yeah.
So if you are saying, I want this detached house and I'm, under 1.5, then you're probably competing. And if you're like above 2, then it just depends on what you want. So we can kind of speak to that as well. And I think it's really important for the buyer to understand and for us to understand and prepare them that they will likely be facing competition, in which case you need to do X, Y, Z in order to get the house.
Yeah. you got to do a little advance prep, a little homework
Yeah.
before we start touring. So that way, we're all on the same page in terms of what your risk level comforts are, what you can actually afford and want to pay for your monthly payment.
And I think in 2025, specifically for detached, you were maybe competing, but not as much. I think we're going to re-enter a zone where you were competing with 4, 5, 6, 7 offers again. And I think everyone kind of slept on that. And now we're back to the normal market of if it's a hot house, there might be double-digit offers.